This is a rifle from my grandfather. He was from Montana, married a woman from Cincinnati. He was a competitive shooter, and his wife had a friend who had been recently widowed, and she didn't want this in the house along with another gun. She was going to toss them off the bridge into the Ohio River. And my grandfather stepped in and said, I'll take them off your hands if you don't mind.
Almost thrown away as trash, these guns are known as Turner rifles. The primary modification is the bayonet bar mounted on the side of the barrel near the muzzle, allowing this large, brass-handled Bahn Frei style saber bayonet to be attached. Although the rifle isn't itself marked, it was made by Henry Seibert, an immigrant German gunsmith who operated the Buckeye Gun Shop in Cincinnati from 1856 to 58. This example is very much in line with the kind of work he produced. Notably, the bayonet carries the Turner motto, Bahn Frei, meaning get out of the way, clear the way, here we come. Most of these bayonets are not marked, but this one is an exception. On the blade in very small letters is the name Hug, referring to Rudolph Hug, a Cincinnati cutler and dental instrument maker. When the Civil War began, he also made bayonets for these rifles. That maker's mark makes this piece significantly more desirable, especially since Hug bayonets are not particularly common.
Incredibly scarce gun. Wonderful story. As a grouping, I would put a very conservative auction estimate on this set at between $4,000 and $6,000. The fact that the bayonet is maker marked makes it much more desirable. Hug bayonets are not particularly common. As a matter of fact, the last time I had one, which was about a dozen years ago, at that time there were only 9 or 10 known. Wow. It's such a really cool part of Civil War history that most people don't know about. They don't know about these German language regiments that fought for the Union.
That's amazing.
A few years ago, the market was a little hotter. Maybe 10 years ago, this would have been $8,000 to $10,000.
It may be just a small glass image, but more than that, it once helped shape a presidency. And few people even know it exists. This is an ambrotype campaign pin of Abraham Lincoln from 1860, before he grew his famous beard. Then it was later acquired by Edwin Sargent of Searsport, Maine at some point. Notably, the image comes from a photograph taken by Matthew Brady, one of the most important photographers of the time. His original portrait was very large and showed Lincoln from the knees up, but it was carefully cropped to fit this small pin. These images were widely used during Lincoln's campaign, marking one of the first times photography played a major role in promoting a presidential candidate. This particular one was even made into postcards and put into Harper's Weekly. In addition, the back paper tells that ambrotype itself was produced by George Clark, as noted on the back, though part of that label is damaged. Despite some minor flaking on the glass, the image remains strong with good tone and detail. Fewer than 50 of these are known to exist, making it very
guessing.
A necklace is not a bad wedding anniversary gift, especially when that wedding has lasted for over 5 decades. Now, this piece was believed to have been exactly that in the mid-1950s, though experts date it to the early 1900s, meaning it could have been purchased as an estate piece. Notably, the necklace is signed Cartier, New York, marked NY after the Cartier script. It is set with 2 beautiful sapphires. The main sapphire, which is the large sapphire on the bottom, is approximately 10 carats. It could be approximately 12 and is bezel set. The smaller stone is around 3 carats, with the same lighter, more brilliant Ceylon quality from present-day Sri Lanka. This is because Ceylon stones are usually powdery and not as saturated as the darker stones are. Plus, it is mounted in platinum, with very fine wirework and small-cut diamond accents, all typical of the 1900s. Those stones pump up the price.
I think a conservative value for insurance purposes would be
Gift.
There was an art director at I. Miller Shoes on Fifth Avenue in New York between around 1952 and 1955. During that time, he hired a young freelance artist, Andy Warhol, who was described as wearing torn dungarees with disheveled hairs, but with a fantastic portfolio. So this artwork was likely given to him by Andy Warhol as a thank you gift. Now, the work is titled Happy Butterfly Day. It is a hand-colored print made in 1955. Warhol first created an ink drawing, then produced an offset lithograph so he could make multiple copies. Later, he hand-colored examples like this one, making each unique again. It includes a dedication at the top, a strong ink signature at the bottom, and a small inscription which is possibly a phone number. It also shows some handling marks, but the colors remain strong. Most examples are not signed and not all are hand-colored, which sets this one apart.
So at auction today, this could do very well.
But Eliza Ann Oliver actually drew it entirely by hand. Now it is titled The United States, and she drew it in March of 1823 or 24, but the exact date is unclear due to her calligraphy. Interestingly, she was likely only 13 or 14 years old when she did it. In addition, it is known as a schoolgirl map, a form tied to a shift in 19th century education. Visually, her skill is exceptional. She uses at least 3 different fonts, carefully maps river systems, and even renders topography with small curls to show mountains in 3 dimensions, which is something rarely seen. The scale is also notable, as this is one of the largest examples from the schoolgirl map period, which lasts roughly from the 1810s to the 1840s. She also received an award from Boston for her work, so this is a great piece that is beautiful and the value will surely. It may look like a simple cream pot, but it was forged by Paul Revere. It is actually a helmet-formed cream pot, and his mark is on the back of the foot. It belonged to the Thaddeus Harris family and was part of a dramatic escape on the night the family left Charlestown after learning the British regulars were coming. They took important papers, linens, and some silver, including this cream pot and spoons. They then fled to Lexington, later moving to Sterling, Massachusetts for safety following the battles of Lexington and Concord on April 19, 1775. Now, the pot is neoclassical in style with beautiful engraving, including family initials, showing its original ownership. Alongside the pot, there is a contemporary diary by Thaddeus Hill and a miniature portrait of him that provides first-hand reports of that event. What makes this object really valuable is that the mark connects it to Paul Revere. Plus, the fact that it survived that conflict is a bonus.
I brought in a big plastic bucket filled with first-run issues of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
When comic books become the topic, any hardcore fan is definitely going to have heard of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. These are first-run issues of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles from 1984 to the early 90s. Kevin Eastman worked at a restaurant, Johnny's Orweed, in the early 80s. Eastman helped the business and, with a small loan, co-launched the second issue of the comic, which of course went on to become a huge phenomenon. This led to role-playing games, trading cards, a TV series, and a 1990 movie franchise. Now, among the collection is a first edition, first printing of issue number 1, featuring early artwork of Leonardo on yellow paper. There's also a rare t-shirt designed by Eastman for restaurant staff in 1984, signed on the back showing mature artistic style. Now, this is one of the earliest depictions of his work outside the comics, so it is very valuable when it comes to price.
I brought a painting that was my grandfather's, and it hangs in my bedroom.
Eanger Irving Couse was not only an artist, but also a cultural ambassador for Native American art because his work often depicted Native American life as peaceful and idyllic. Couse was born in Michigan and was classically trained in Chicago, New York, and France. Between about 1897 and 1901, he moved to Oregon to be near his wife's family. There, he painted Northwest Coast tribes, especially the Klickitat. Now, the artwork is in oil on canvas, and on the back of the painting, the owner wrote, "Mr. Couse, who painted this picture, told me that it was the portrait of a Tlingit Indian of the Columbia River by the name of Solali. It was painted around 1900. Couse later became famous for his scenes in Taos, New Mexico, where he was one of the founding artists and the first president of the Taos Artists Society. His training, travels, and ability to capture the people and landscape he painted make this piece historically and
since I was about 5 years old.
It's nice when toys that a person played with as a kid is passed down to the next generation because there's just this emotional feel to it, right? In this case, that happened with Miss Louisa. The would-be parent can even be seen with her in this photo in PA in 1920. Now, interestingly, Miss Louisa actually dates back even further to around 1830. She's an American papier-mâché doll with a hand-sewn cloth body. Dolls like hers got usually made on the East Coast, particularly Philadelphia. Her body resembles the Grainer dolls from that era, with individually stitched fingers and toes. She's handmade, hand-painted, and although she looks slightly masculine, she is female as indicated in the subtle part of the middle of her face. Her original clothing, a single drawing can tell a story to anyone who sees it, and this original illustration by H.A. Rey does exactly that. It was created for the first Curious George book in Paris just before World War II, about 85 years ago. The race, German Jews, managed to escape the approaching German army on bicycles that H.A. Rey built himself from spare parts. They carried this drawing in their backpack as they fled France, eventually making it to America. Years later, someone who worked for the Houghton Mifflin Company that published the first Rey books gave this illustration to his son as a wedding gift. The inscription reads, "To Christopher and Mary Jane, with love and all good wishes from the Reys, July 20th, 1968. Visually, the illustration captures happiness and the theme of escape, much like Curious George himself. It's done in charcoal watercolor and colored pencil on the paper, with the back bearing a personal note from the Reys. That connection to the very first Curious George story, October 11th, 1896, in Lyon, France, was a renowned American ceramic artist and educator. She was trained at the Bauhaus, a pioneering art school founded by Walter Gropius, where she studied alongside renowned artists like Paul Klee and Wassily Kandinsky. After immigrating to the United States in 1940, she taught at the Bahn Frei and anchored influential books on pottery, including Pottery, Form and Expression, and The Invisible Core. Her work and teaching methods have left a lasting impact on the ceramics community, earning her the title of the Grande Dame of Potters by fellow artist Robert Arneson. Now, this piece might have been acquired sometime in the late 1950s or 60s, and it was made by Marguerite Wildenhain at Bahn Frei. This piece is very nicely and evenly thrown. It's got a balanced, elegant form that reflects the precision and expertise of a master potter. Among Bahn Frei works, this is considered one of the better examples, so that particular one may have been the second place winner at the 1939 to 1940 World's Fair. A blue ribbon from Macy's showed that it earned its entry into the fair. It was made by Jessie Teed, who was known for her work. She was born in 1887 in a small town called Guilford, New York, and she lived a very long life until 1974. After she passed away, she was buried in Evergreen Hills Cemetery. Now, she wrote about her technique, using quarter-inch strips of wool for a lightweight yet sturdy rug and burlap from flour sacks as a base. And this hooked rug has thin wool strips that are pulled through the surface with a hook to form the pile. Unlike typical American folk rugs, Jessie's design is sophisticated. There are Art Deco zodiac figures surrounding in a central sailing ship in turbulent seas. She even signed it JMT, hidden in the waves, and dated it 1932. The complex but beautiful design makes it very attractive. Lines are small in cost but huge in history, and this football is a perfect example. It's a Miami Dolphins retired numbers football at a secondhand shop in Maine. On the ball are 3 Hall of Famers, 12 for Bob Griese, 13 for Marino, and 39 for Larry Zonka. Griese was named Super Bowl MVP in '79. Marino, the quarterback, was inducted into the Hall of Fame, and Zonka, a running back, was known for his physical style and was a 3-time Pro Bowler. Griese and Zonka led Miami to NFL's only undefeated season back in 1972, and Marino became one of the most prolific passers in history. Each of the 3 autographs appears to have been signed in a black Sharpie. Visually, the ball is painted in Dolphins colors and is a specialty souvenir. What makes it especially rare is that all 3 retired numbers appear together on a single piece. While similar items exist, you rarely get all 3 combined, which makes this quite valuable. Flemish Gothic Revival style home. It was designed by New York architect Frederick Copley and built between 1862 and 1863. Just a few years later, in 1868, the Miller Iron Company in Providence, Rhode Island, created this model of Clifton House as a birdhouse. Visibly, it's stamped Patent 1868, suggesting it was made that year or very shortly afterward. The Miller Iron Company would have issued it with plain cast iron, and it was later painted by someone. Martin started in Germany, moved to New York City in 1833, then settled in Nazareth, Pennsylvania. The guitar has a spruce top, Brazilian rosewood back and sides, and a mahogany neck. The Brazilian rosewood is now rare and endangered. The guitar is in near mint condition, and the original case, with its bright green interior, is beautiful. Just needs a neck set to perfect that string action. Its value really jumps because I don't know J.E. Caldwell. It's a name known in Philadelphia as a premier retailer of high-grade clocks like this one. The case is called a bracket clock, a form used for a couple of centuries. This Victorian example was likely made around 1880. It's got a solid, robust mechanism with compensation and several features on the dial. You can turn the strike portion on or off, letting it chime on the quarter hour, an hour, or just tick silently. The center dial allows fine adjustment or temperature change, so the clock keeps accurate time without moving the pendulum. There is something on this base of this doorstop which is actually clever. But first, the doorstop was invented by Osborne Dorsey in 1878, who got a U.S. patent number 210764 for his invention. Now it's an Uncle Sam doorstop, heavy and hand-painted. The base reads, "For the open door." This is actually a clever nod to the open door policy around 1899 to 1900, which promoted trade in China. Interestingly, this cast iron figural doorstop is American-made, likely from New England or the Midwest, dating circa 1910 to 1920. Uncle Sam stands proud and dapper, symbolizing the U.S. and the nation's role in the international affairs of the day. The back is flat, designed to hold a door open. Plus, what makes this piece exceptionally rare is its paint, since most turn up unpainted. This one has authentic original paint with fine crazing, showing age without restoration. Just a handful of painted examples are known about, making it the second rarest doorstop known.
My father-in-law was in the Army in D-Day, Normandy, St. Lo. He came home unscathed. Over the years, he eventually divulged where he got them, how he acquired them. He picked them up off of some German soldiers that were disposed of. He passed away, God bless him, and because today is D-Day, and because of my father-in-law's valiant efforts, why I decided to bring it up here for the roadshow.
War brings destruction and loss of life, but occasionally people gain things from it. Take this S98 bayonet. Seitenwehr is the German term. It's a standard-issue German bayonet from 1898 to 1905. Though this model remained in use, it had limited production through World War I. Visually, it's quite long and spindly. Typically, the scabbard breaks on these. This example is unusual. The engraving, or abbreviation at the beginning, stands for Kaiserlich, referring to the Kaiserlich Marine, the Kaiser's Navy, specifically the 2nd Sea Battalion. They were essentially the German Marine Corps. In World War I, they were famously part of the naval infantry positioned north of the line around Flanders. They also saw action in Antwerp, where they drove out the Royal Naval Division. Interestingly, this piece was never issued. WKC produced it for private purchase, and the lack of markings on the spine confirms that. It likely came straight out the line, got engraved, and bought to wear with a walking out uniform.
On the market today, this would have a retail sales value of $1,200 to $1,500.
Very good. That's a pleasure to hear. Yes. Wow. I told myself if I were on this show, I was not going to say wow like everybody else does.
It was my great-grandfather's. It's kind of an artifact of the Old West. He was a sheriff and police chief in Crawford, Nebraska.
Any old Western movie feels incomplete without a sheriff carrying a Colt. This example is a factory-engraved Colt single-action .45 caliber with a 5.5-inch barrel, and it retains quite a bit of finish in the protected areas. Originally, it would have been entirely blued. It also comes with its original holster, and the engraving appears to be the work of Helfrich, a Colt engraver from around the turn of the century. Now, one of the strongest points here is the factory letter. By serial number, it confirms the caliber, the 5.5-inch barrel, the blued finish, rubber grips, and that it was factory engraved. It shipped to Hartley and Graham in New York in 1885. The letter notes hard rubber grips, although the gun now wears custom pearl grips. As a retailer, Hartley and Graham likely replaced them before sale. The grip fits perfectly and features initials on one side and a steer head on the other. There is some damage to them, which does affect the value.
Do you have an idea what you think it might be worth?
A few $100s, maybe.
Well, we could sell it in our gallery for $25,000.
You're kidding.
No, serious.
That's hard to believe.
It's a great
That's
thing.
awesome.
Very few engraved single actions.
25,000?
Yeah.
Wow.
Is a swivel gun. It came from the Russian fort in Sitka, Alaska, and when the Russians moved out in the late 1800s, not long after that, there was a gold rush in Skagway, and many people came to Alaska, and a lot of things were left behind, appropriated. One of the people that came to Skagway was a man named Dr. Will Chase, and in the course of his work as a doctor, he got this through one of his patients. When the Skagway gold rush was over, the next big rush was in Cordova, so many of the people moved to Cordova, and he was one of them. And my father moved there after the war, worked in the hospital, he's an X-ray lab technician. So he got to know Dr. Chase, and toward the end of his time in Cordova, Dr. Chase passed this on to my father.
Imagine a small cannon that could quickly fire in any direction during a sea battle. Mounted on a ship, it allowed the user to track fast-moving targets with ease. This type of weapon is known as a swivel gun, and it was especially common in regions like Malaysia, India, and the Philippines. These were small cannons fixed to a rotating mount, typically attached to the side of boats or fortifications, making them ideal for close-range defense against enemy ships or attackers. Historically, swivel guns date back several centuries, particularly in Southeast Asia, where they were widely used to protect trade routes and in naval engagements. Local craftsmen produced them in bronze or iron, often incorporating decorative elements that reflected their culture. European traders and colonizers later adopted and spread their use across different parts of the world. Over time, they became an important component of maritime warfare, and what makes a piece like this so valuable is both its role in naval combat and its cultural significance.
Have you ever given any thought to value?
Not a clue. I didn't know where to ask or even any idea to start.
At auction, it would probably make somewhere between $800 to $1,200.
$1,200?
Yeah.
Okay.
I brought a family heirloom, a Civil War musket that's been passed down for a long time.
The American Civil War was one of the most intense conflicts in U.S. history, and the Confederate Richmond rifle musket belonged to Silas Bishop, who served in either the 1st or 41st Virginia Regiment. Now, this musket was produced in Richmond after the Confederates captured machinery from the Harper's Ferry Arsenal in 1861, giving them the mobility to manufacture weapons locally. It is a simplified version of the U.S. Model 1855 rifle musket, since the South lacked the tools to replicate complex parts like the automatic Maynard tape priming system. Also, early examples feature a high lock plate hump, which was gradually reduced by 1862, making this a Type II rifle musket with a medium-sized hump. Later models were ground down to further resemble a standard Civil War musket. In addition, it bears a clear CS Richmond marking dated 1862, a brass butt plate, and hand-stamped barrel bands. The original rear sight remains, and the gun is in good condition. 30,000 of these got made before 1865, making it common, but it's still very valuable.
For insurance purposes, I would probably insure this gun at about $8,000. It's nice example. If you can substantiate all the information about your ancestor and substantiate that it absolutely was his gun in some way, then we can look at the value increasing substantially, as much as 100%.
Boy, that's surprisingly valuable. I had no idea it was worth that much.